So, yes.
Second oral question, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the UK Government stands alongside our partners and have worked in the Human Rights Council core group on Sri Lanka, which has led to international efforts over many years to promote accountability, reconciliation, human rights in Sri Lanka, including most recently implementing the UN Human Rights Council Resolution 51-1. The resolution renewed the mandate of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to report on Sri Lanka and to protect and preserve evidence of past human rights abuses to use in future accountability processes.
My Lords, going beyond my noble friend's answer, and given that next year is the 75th anniversary of Sri Lanka's independence, and therefore its long partnership with Great Britain as a member of the Commonwealth, would my noble friend be able to say if Her Majesty's government will consider working with Sri Lanka to invest in a large landmark development scheme for the country that would help add resilience in the future against the economic shocks of the sort that we've seen it suffer recently?
My Lords, I assure my noble friend, notwithstanding the continuing prioritisation we're giving to human rights, and that has to remain part of that conversation and discussion to ensure that the issues that arose from the previous civil war, particularly, and the targeting of particular communities is not forgotten, and that's why we remain resolute in what we're doing at the HRC. But I take on board the specific element of economic empowerment of communities as a way to build a country, and certainly in previous months, earlier this year, as the then Minister responsible for our relations with Sri Lanka, I've met with President Wickremesinghe. I've recently again also met with Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, and our focus has also been on the current IMF package and how that should act as a lever to ensure economic prosperity for all communities across Sri Lanka.
My Lord, following on from the tail end of the Minister's remarks, would he wish to agree that one of the best ways to assist Sri Lanka in these challenging times is to speak up for the country where opportunity exists, and that partnering would be a win-win situation, both geo-economically and geostrategically?
My Lords, in part I've already addressed that issue, but I agree with the noble Lord that the economic prosperity of a country is an enabler to allow that country to move forward. But at the same time, we remain very much focused to ensure that the important elements of reconciliation and justice also prevail.
My Lords, the noble Lord assured the House about how we were responding to the humanitarian crisis that occurred, and I welcomed the government's efforts. But of course, in November, the UN team in Sri Lanka revised and extended their humanitarian needs and priorities plan, which included a call for additional funding to address nutrition and provide clean drinking water. Can the noble Lord the Minister tell us what steps we are taking to give support to that plan, including ensuring that other allies do likewise?
My Lords, the noble Lord is right, and of course we've worked very closely on the issue of the humanitarian situation prevailing. Just in the advance of the summer recess, I met with his colleague, the Honourable Catherine West, as the Minister for Asia, Shadow Minister for Asia, to share with her the details of our humanitarian support. There was $3 million specifically allocated. He rightly raises the issue of the UN assessments, and as the noble Lord would know, we're working very closely with UN agencies, not just OCHA but other agencies as well, to ensure issues of nutrition are addressed, medical support is addressed, particularly with other key agencies such as UNICEF, with a focus on women and children as well.
My Lords, shouldn't this be a mission for the Commonwealth as a whole and not just for the United Kingdom government?
My Lords, I think it's the turn of the Liberal Democrats.
The bad governance, conflict and human rights abuses have pushed Sri Lanka to the brink. It's reported that their debt to China is $7.4 billion, or nearly 20% of its public external debt. So will the government work with Sri Lanka, yes, to help them address their internal reconciliation, but also to reduce their exposure to China and their dependence on Russian oil, and ensure that they can engage with the whole world and not be just pushed to one side?
My Lords, again, I agree with the Noble Lord, and that is why we're working very closely. When I was last in Sri Lanka, we worked on the specific importance of ensuring the restructuring of their debt with the IMF. That programme will take time, up to about 6 months, to ensure the outcomes of that. The Noble Lord is again right on the issue of infrastructure support. It's not just Sri Lanka. There's many countries across that region and beyond that are reliant on China infrastructure, but that results in very long-term indebtedness to that particular country. And we are looking to see how we can form alliances and partnerships to overcome that. But the IMF rescheduling of the debt is the first step to that. And I think more longer term, perhaps picking up on the friend that I also heard, it's good to have two ears rather than just one, about the Commonwealth. I think there is a role for the Commonwealth to play in this, and that's why we're pleased also India has come forward and also given certain credit lines to Sri Lanka to help it through its current economic troubles.
My lords, wouldn't this be a mission which would fit very well with the purpose and aspirations of the Commonwealth as a whole, and not just on the United Kingdom?
My Lords, as I said, I did hear my noble friend in part, and I agree with him. I know the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Secretary-General have engaged directly with the Sri Lankan government, and we are looking to key partners. And I mentioned in my earlier remark about the role, an important role India is playing in terms of supporting Sri Lanka at this time as a near neighbour, both on issues of energy, but also in providing credit lines to allow it to navigate its way through the current economic challenges it's facing.
My noble friend aware that I shall personally support and work for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission established in Sri Lanka, rather similar to South Africa and Colombia. However, are there not two key initiatives that Her Majesty's government need to do to help? Firstly, to persuade the United Nations to remove the 20-year restriction on the source of the evidence in the Darsman report of 2011, which stated up to 40,000 people killed. Secondly, the UK government itself surely should release now to any commission the unredacted dispatches from the UK's respected and experienced military attaché, Colonel Gash, who was on the battlefield every day from January the 1st to May the 18th, 2009, proving in his dispatches beyond doubt that there was no genocide.
My Lords, I can't agree with my noble friend in all aspects of his questions, because what is very, very clear, the whole point of standing up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission back in 2015 was there was a real recognition, even by the Sri Lankan government of that time, about the importance of bringing communities together to ensure that atrocities could be fully investigated and, more importantly, perpetrators brought to account. And that's why we've been pursuing the issue at the UN Human Rights Council. I think that's the right approach. Of course, in time, there is a need for domestic mechanisms, but the sad truth is, since 2015, despite successive changes of governments, we've seen little progress on the actual Truth and Justice Commission in Sri Lanka.
My Lords, my noble friend the Minister and others have referred so far in this debate to some of the international organisations, the UN, the IMF, the Commonwealth even. Could my noble friend the Minister enlighten us on which other international organisations the UK government is working with to help the people of Sri Lanka at this difficult time? And I should refer, noble Lords, to my register of interests.
My Lords, as I've said previously, it is important that there's international alliances. First of all, we're working with key countries in the region. I mentioned India specifically, and that's an important partner. The Commonwealth has already been mentioned. I've mentioned the International Monetary Fund when it comes to the issue of the economy, and we're working with a variety of UN agencies on the ground, including the World Food Programme, including UNICEF, OCHA, to ensure that the humanitarian issues and priorities are also focused on as well.
My Lords, Sri Lanka last April became the first ever country in the Asia-Pacific region to default on its sovereign debt. Inflation is now running at 68%. The UN predict that nearly half the population will be food insecure by the end of the year. So would you agree with me that rebuilding the agricultural sector is absolutely crucial after the government's misplaced decision to ban fertilisers and sprays? What technical help can his department give?
My Lords, on the specifics, I will certainly follow up on what my noble friend has said, but I agree with him on the issue of rampant inflation. I think we saw in September it was at 73.7%. This month, actually, over the last month, it's actually reduced a tad, but it's nothing to talk through. I think there's been marginal single digit. I think it's nearer high 60s. However, he's also right that we need to work on ensuring that the issue of food insecurity rather, is addressed. That's why we're working very closely with institutions such as the World Food Programme to ensure those are addressed as a priority.
Lord Dole question, Lord John of Cookham.